Sit, talk to me, damn it, or else I'm gonna throw you in the fire!
You stupid bitch, you filthy... Flyover State of Fear. Welcome to Flyover State of Fear. I got my man Brian. I'm Joe. How are you, Brian?
I'm good. Practicing my karate moves.
He's chopping away.
Right. I'm kung fu fighting.
Everybody was fast as lightning.
That's right. Damn right.
Did you? Well, you're quite a bit older than me, but as a kid, did you have a talent show in like the third grade or so? And like, did any kids do their karate moves to kung fu fighting?
Oh no, that's cool though. No, my son was in a couple of talent shows, but we never really had him in my school as a kid that I remember.
We had one in the third grade.
Yeah.
Mine was like my friend sang the Lion Sleeps Tonight, and I was the lion sleeping. It was
nice,
super wholesome and
adorable.
But no, you said that's cool. I don't remember the kid who stood up there and did minor karate moves to Kung Fu Lightning.
That would be great.
Perceived as cool to other third graders.
It was not perceived as cool?
No.
Oh, wow. Okay. I guess I wouldn't know what age
I think the kid was more of a dork to begin with.
And that all depends on the kid, too. Because I definitely know the phenomenon of, like, the kid who's, like, comes to school with the wrong energy, who's like, I'm a karate kid and I go to karate class. So if you're not bringing the right energy with that, it's not going to help.
There was this kid. It's been years since I mentioned him, so you probably don't remember. And I don't think it was this kid, but it very well could have been this kid. And through all high school, or all middle school, or elementary school, middle school, high school. And he's now like, I don't know if he still is, but like, was like Twitter famous, and like he's a nerdy white kid. I'm just gonna leave the name out of it. Nerdy white kid who like went to a black frat and then like got like social media popular and then like used that fame to like be a voice for like people of color, but also like have been profiting off of it for like he's kind of full of shit.
Yeah, sure.
But I think he plays well. I might have been him, but that was the kid who's like, 30 pounds wet and was like, I know karate, and you're like, yeah. Okay. and then like, then when he got like through college and see him online, and he's all like suave and has like, like his fraternity really like gave him a glow up.
Nice.
I don't know if he's still like famous, but he got himself in trouble by like, he was invited to the cookout, but he spoke at the cookout.
See, that's not good.
Yeah, like he wrote a paper about like something for like Howard University or something, or whatever, and he wrote some things.
Bold move.
People got pretty mad at him, of the people of that demographic. Anyway, that's a weird tangent.
We like to start loose, loosey goosey. Plus, we talked about. We're gonna keep the now watching portion of the show short today, so it's fine. We can eat up a few minutes here. The people love it.
Yeah, they love the banter. We spoke about a few weeks ago, last week, with our now watchings. Who knows? I haven't, in the horror space, watched much. I've watched trash. I've been just bad melodramas. So I'm not going to talk about any of those. I watched Megalopolis for How Does This Get Made, which I'm going to tomorrow. Unwatchable, truly one of the worst things I've ever seen. Just complete head scratcher.
It makes me laugh too because it's like everything I have not watched, and I probably won't.
I guess that's kind of genre.
But all the clips and stuff I've seen are fully like Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow level effects and stuff.
It's okay. It's a cross between Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow. It's a great pull. I wasn't even thinking of that. The acting of like a Neil Breen film, but just with big actors.
Mm-hmm.
And do you remember Southland Tales?
Oh yeah.
Okay. And 45% Southland Tales.
Sure, like that kind of like overly ambitious to the point of like you're not making sense
No,
anymore.
that's why I'm like this. I'm like, I think I get what it is. It's just like a powerful man could change the world. Blah blah blah. World won't let him change world unless he does X. Yada.
Yeah.
Everything else, you're like, what? Your name who? It's Southland Tales with
Yeah,
Sky
that's fair.
Captain of the World of Tomorrow's
And I don't know. I know that like again every movie now gets like a reappraisal. But Southland Tales sucks.
Okay. And I will call it face value on here. He'll never hear it. Our frequent guest and buddy Lon, a couple years ago, gave that second appraisal.
Mhm.
Was like, you gotta watch the director's cut.
Right, the director's cut.
It's
Yeah.
still not great, but it's better.
Even though everybody hates the director's cut of Donnie Darko, and that
I
would think that people would be like take that into
I
consideration.
think he went as far to say, I think it's a secret masterpiece, blah, blah. I went out. This is during COVID, or it didn't go out. Ordered it, ordered the Arrow, like,
yeah. I
Arrow
remember when that
release.
was coming out. It was a nice set.
Yeah, it is a nice set. It looks nice. I'm never gonna watch it again. The Arrow release, it was like 15. I found it for like $15, like perfect. Like, watched it about 3 times. Laura would walk past and go, "What is this? Don't explain it. This looks like shit." And I'm like, "Guess what? It is."
It is shit.
And I knew that because it was one of those things where I saw that when I was in middle school. Because I'm like, I'm getting movies. I like art house, like blah blah.
Sure. I can get into the weird shit.
Yeah, I want to get in the. And I remember watching it going, "This is pretty bad. I don't get it." And always had that opinion. But like I always say, movies like that, you go back and reevaluate your middle school brain because they will change, or they should change.
Yeah, because there are ones that will like get better, but there's also ones where you'll be like, nope, I was on the money on this one.
Yeah, like Sky Captain of the World Tomorrow, great movie.
It's
middle school me,
it's alright. It's
yeah,
fine.
but middle school me, that was terrible. Just on a ship the whole time.
See, I went the other way on it. I think I first thought it was great, and then I was like, okay, this is more like a gimmick than anything else.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's very sad. I didn't plan on talking about it, but I've had to watch it, and I kind of watched it twice as like maybe I didn't get it, like just almost background. So, Brian, what have you covered in the last week?
Well, I've still kind of been in the TV world, but a couple things. I did a little horror schlock double feature the other night where I watched Man's Best Friend with Lance Henriksen and Ali Sheedy, probably most famous for having the scene from Friday where the dog chases the mailman and the dad's watching it and he's like, get him, get his ass. That's from the movie he's watching is Man's Best Friend.
Oh.
And then I followed that up with Killer Clowns from Outer Space. So
always good to have a Killer Clowns watch. That's a perfect palate cleanser.
Yeah. But I'm a big Man's Best Friend again. One of those like cable classics for me that I kind of grew up with.
What's
like,
that on? Oh, did you have the DVD?
I bought the Shout Factory. It was on when it was on sale this month. But you can find it streaming, no doubt. If you want to check it out. It's funny. It actually kind of is a great way to dovetail into Candyman a little bit because something I wanted to talk about with Candyman was just where horror was at in general in the early 90s, and also how like Candyman is probably the only franchise from that time that has any dignity, that like has held up with any kind of reverence.
It's crazy, and I was waiting to talk about certain things of this. I was doing research on Candyman today. I mean, this is for anyone. This is like a top 2. It's like a top 2 favorite. It's like this and Nightmare on Elm Street. Like they flip back and forth. This is my favorite.
Incredible movie. I mean, like I don't think anybody's gonna be surprised to come on here and hear us say that we like Candyman.
Yeah, but it's just one of. I think it might be my favorite movie. At minimum, I was born in '92. It might be my favorite movie of '92. Of like it's a top 10 '90s movie for me. Like I love it.
It's one of the very few movies that ever actually scared Harrison.
It's scary. It's a scary movie. And it bears effects, and we'll get on all that. But I want to bring up, you're talking about of reverence. It's really funny to read certain things about it. And one of them was like the big part of this movie is the score makes it, right?
The Philip Glass score.
It's beautiful. It's
It is
haunting.
haunting.
They keyed in effectively. Philip Glass scored it, and he thought he was scoring it for. He was under the impression that it was, I guess, going to be like really, really high art and like more like this British short story of like the Clive Barker story, which I wouldn't even call Clive Barker high art, but like
No,
that's what his like a thought was when he was making it. And then he watched the movie and he was like, "Oh, pretty disappointed. It's just a trashy slasher movie, you know."
Which
And
I
like,
can't believe you would watch this and be like, "Oh, just another slasher."
and
Like,
like I was reading it, I was watching it. And this might be like 1,000th time actually watching it, but I'm like, oh my god, this is so different. It's so different in its filmmaking and the way the characters act, and even like some of the structure and editing and blah blah than any other slasher to be like, oh, it's a trashy horror movie. There's some moments in it for sure, and I think like some of the kills like purposely are so brutal to show the effect of them.
well, also we can. This is one of those things that we just have to get out of the way at
Yeah.
the top of show because it has to be said. Despite being aesthetically very cool, the hook is a terrible choice for a weapon. Like, he's always pushing it through people, and it doesn't like you can't stab somebody with it because it's got like a rounded edge, so it's just like jamming it through somebody and blood is spraying.
Get up, like I actually think Helen, Ghost Helen, has the most effective one because she goes up through like the balls and asshole.
Yeah.
But
and I mean, like, yeah, he like does that. That's how he kind of kills Bernadette too, the like ripping upwards. But like,
he does
there's
that
a couple times where he stabs through from behind, and I'm like, that's not effective.
Yeah. Like
that's...
I think it's some of his powers. I don't know the mystique.
Yeah,
he
falls into that. The Candyman falls into that category. Kind of similar to what we're talking about in A Violent Nature, and also Hatchet, where he's a slasher, but he's also a ghost.
Mm-hmm.
So like the abilities are vague. Also in this movie, I never really kind of pieced together before, but he kind of Freddy Krueger with his powers. Like he needs people to believe in him and needs people to talk about him.
I have that note too,
which I think plays well into the reboot quote because he literally tells Helen like, you're going to become part of my story and that's going to help give me power, and that is kind of what happens. Like they tell Helen's story, like a version of Helen's story in the
version. I love the Candyman
Candyman reboot is incredible. It got I don't know why wildly underrated.
I always wanted to always chalk that one up to like it was a symptom of like us being early in like COVID, like lockdown.
Yeah,
it still like had like a 75 million. Like it just looked recently. It's made a good chunk of money for its budget, but yeah, the touches
directed the shit out of it.
Oh my god, the touches though of the story and the urban legend in that, and like Virginia Madsen has a cameo in that. It's just like an audio recording because she did record some stuff doing this thesis. So anyway, we are to kind of circle us back because I think there's just so much I want to say about Candyman. I'm sure you do.
Start it up.
We're doing this today because the great Tony Todd passed not too long ago. To us as fans, it was surprising. He was, I believe, 69 years young or 50.
He had looked a little gaunt the last few times I'd seen him. I wondered if he was maybe ill.
I would assume that was my assumption. Nothing wrote or said me about it, so I'd rather not sit on that. But
no, I don't like to speculate about cause of death. It's not really anybody's business. But I just noticed the last few times I saw him in interviews and things, he was starting to look a little, and that could be signs of people kind of struggling with something.
Tony Todd was as the outpouring online has been showing, just a staple of the horror community, had owned this role immediately, and amongst other things we've covered on here before, like Final Destination. He was in Tales of the Hood, which I
I just mentioned Hatchet. He's in Hatchet.
Hatchet. He popped up in a lot of small.
He actually worked a couple more times with Bernard Rose, who wrote and directed this movie, and he did in 2015. They did an adaptation of Frankenstein that has Carrie-Anne Moss and Danny Houston in it. Not bad. Right. It's kind of cool. I rewatched it actually the other night when Tony Todd passed because I knew I was going to be doing Candyman, so I was like, I want to watch something else with him. And it's not, not like the best movie I've ever seen or anything, but an interesting take on Frankenstein and like a cool cast and stuff. So
the irony, you said you watched this because in honor of the night when he passed? He passed Friday, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so. Yeah.
So the Saturday. Tony Todd also did a lot of video game voiceovers. Most notably, recently he was Venom, and excellent Venom. My almost 4-year-old nephew is over, and he doesn't have video games as us, but he knows, and doesn't really, I don't think, knows what they are, but he knows he's obsessed with Spider-Man and knows I have the Spider-Man video game with Spider-Man 2, and he was like, oh, he put this on? So he do the classic controller, he holds a fake controller.
He holds a controller that's not plugged into anything or not turned on.
He's figuring it out now because it's not doing the things he wants, but I'm swinging around, I'm fighting. But I was like, I'm honoring Tony Todd a little bit with a Venom would pop up and just we are Venom.
In my own way, I'm on.
Yeah, it was just funny. I'm like, all right, I'm enjoying this for different reasons than you because of the guy I like passed, and no one would even care if I mentioned Tony Todd passed.
Nobody in your house was tuned into that, huh?
No. But yeah, no, this is just one of those movies out there. I love. It's more about alone. When I'm alone or driving, years on end because they do have the deeper voice. Don't do a good Candyman. I'm not gonna pretend to do it, but I do love saying Helen. No, I'll just say that walking around.
Helen.
It's just fun to say.
It is, and also it's one of those great horror. Be my victim. It's one of those great horror, much like the Night of the Living Dead. We're coming to get you, Barbara. Yeah. It's like one of those great horror phrases that just exists. Almost every good franchise has one.
He's used so effectively. And I will say there's three and a half good sequels to this. There's one dud. I would say the third was that
Yeah, Candyman 3 is pretty rough.
Yeah,
it's funny because even though this franchise didn't start till 1992, when you watch Candyman 3, it feels like an 80s horror sequel. It feels like one of the later Freddy's or Jasons, It's got that kind of more corny vibe to it.
Yeah, it's corny. It is a true trash slasher.
Right, it's exactly what this all the stuff that's elevated about original Candyman and even Farewell to the Flesh, which I think is an underrated sequel. I like the lore that they give you in that one. I don't think it's the one perfect or anything, but the third one really drops off pretty hard.
And I'm sure it's been a hot minute, but I'm sure Tony Todd's great in it. He always showed up to work.
Absolutely.
But yeah,
and what's cool about usually later sequels like that too is that the big stars start to get a little bit more money. He probably got a better paycheck by doing a couple of those sequels than he did for the first one and stuff.
We can get it out of the way because it's the number one thing known about this movie. Talking about money is that
the extra $26,000.
Yeah, and that's debated. It's either between 23 or 30,000.
Yeah.
But he said, yeah, if you I'll take the bees, but if I get stung, I get $1,000 per sting. Great. I'll take that right now.
Yeah. It's a good deal.
But, so anyway, I don't know, this movie just has a lot to it, a lot of history. I know as growing up, it's later in life it's connected me more. I feel way too late in life into this day of tendencies, and I'm probably mentioned on this show and other shows. Absolutely, the scariest thing in the world to me was the Bloody Mary urban legend. Just frightens me. I don't even find it funny if someone wants to make a joke about it. That is just can't get it out of my psyche. It's just there. So I don't like sleeping with the mirror. I don't like dark bathrooms. It's just something inherently baked into me, and I like obviously get over it by the time like high school, but it's like baked into my
Sure, yeah,
brain.
exactly. Yeah.
Candyman's obviously that urban legend. Like it's married with it. So I found Candyman a lot more palpable because it wasn't those words.
It was something you could experience but it was like separated from actual Bloody Mary. It was like, well, no, Candyman's a movie.
Yeah,
Bloody Mary is real.
yeah, that's gonna happen.
That shit is gonna happen to me.
And even to this day, I'm like, listen, I'm throwing around a little too casually. You know what I'm saying?
We've already said it too many times, guys. Let's tone it down a little bit.
Hush. You just don't.
She who shall not be named.
Yeah. No. But I say that because Candyman is that, right? And it's we've already mentioned it's a Clive Barker short story, and his short story is from what I'm familiar, very different. But it's to deal with poverty and class in London, and it's not racial as Candyman is, and they use the like gentrification dynamics of race class more in America. I think it works better now, and Clive Barker has said such. But it's that urban legend. I love though that this is one of those movies that like I do remember growing up though, and like I said, like this is all through like kids do repurpose this as like, nah, if you say that in the name, like they'll take this movie and say Candyman and do the mirror.
Yeah.
Blah blah sleepovers would say that, and I'm sure especially for like kids that live in Chicago, they definitely were like, oh, I don't know, like it's been almost the movie was so effective it was spun into its own urban legend of itself, and I think that's so cool.
I agree. I speaking of urban legend, I was thinking as we were watching this, I was like, wow, the movie Urban Legend really ripped off some shit from this movie at the very beginning. Like, even so much as you got like Xander Berkeley teaching basically the same class that Robert Englund teaches, and like I was like, oh, they just a few little. I mean, I just feel like maybe when they were making Urban Legend, they were like, somebody was remembering Candyman a little bit. In the back of their mind, they'd seen Candyman.
I don't know how you don't, right? Like, because it's using the same.
Well, I was saying, much like it being the kind of fake version of Bloody Mary, they're also like playing on the whole tropes of an urban legend and stuff too.
It's the same thing.
Well, I always forget this movie starts off with the fake urban legend with Ted Raimi and the girl.
It's so fun because like also just Ted Raimi there's another movie, or might be thinking of this, where he's playing like the hot guy,
or like the tough guy, like
and he's just so not.
Yeah.
So I pulled up this thing. I think it might be thinking of this movie. How he starts off. And
he starts. He's kind of like he's almost like a '50s motorcycle punk. Like.
They say, and what's really cool about this though, the way it starts with the fake urban legend, or not fake way, is we see it, and then later on, the way Candyman inhabits is so different than actually slightly different what we actually get to see.
Well, that's something that I think, and I hadn't really thought about it watching it before, but I do think it's really cool. This movie does is there's a couple times they'll do cutaways like that one to a fake urban legend. But when they're hearing a story that's actually like real about Candyman, it's always just a character telling the story.
Mm-hmm.
They don't do a cutaway to like a flashback or something like that. Those are reserved for like fairy tales for fake stuff.
And this, when he enters the picture, really enters the picture, it becomes a fairy tale, right?
Absolutely.
This is a gothic love story, or at least what they want to portray.
Also, we have to acknowledge that Bram Stoker's Dracula came out like the year and a half or so before this, and there's definitely the same vibe of like of the Gary Oldman Winona Ryder. Like that's in this movie too. That DNA is like definitely here. There was
a couple year theme of like we were talking of the era, right? They're like late, like 89 to like 93, 4, where like the movies felt it's a feeling like felt like this had a little like air to it, and they were like far and few between to find. Like the Omen 3 has this kind of mask to it, right? Like um it's like adult. It's like feels so adult where they're taken away from like the cartoonish, not cartoonish, just like lightness or like silliness of some slashers that they especially became in the 80s.
Oh yeah,
Um,
this definitely feels like it's
and I
trying to
think,
like be a more this you can tell, like I said, you can tell that Candyman came out after Silence of the Lambs, it came out after Bram
yeah.
Stoker's
So
Dracula. It's a
adult.
classier movie,
It's adult.
Yeah.
And that's what I was getting at. It's adult. It feels like Bram Stoker's has that, right? Like I'm gonna go
Yeah.
watch cinema. Like this is trying to be it, and I think it exceeds. So it like exceeds overwhelmingly with that.
But I do think they marketed it as more like they didn't
Oh,
I
but
don't know if it got marketed as that,
I
but
don't
it
know if it
is
got
that,
marketed, but
you know.
it, for all intents and purposes, people mixed her, and this is why like movies are so great is they age differently. Is at the time it's like like Ebert loved it and this and that, but you have I think Siskel. I'm just pulling what was the wiki being like he has a
Yeah.
pimp's trench coat on, a little a little taboo or whatever, and it's like no, that's not what that is. You're using your own fucking bullshit with that.
It's your bias coming through, bitch.
So I do think people viewed it and been like, oh, it's just this slasher, not looking at it, or like, I'm like, oh, this is impactful. So yeah, but the movie starts that way, and we're jumping around, but I think that's more of a conversation, like I said, to talk about the movie and
Oh
Candyman
no,
to
that's
actually
fair.
go through it. Um, but our lead is Helen, Virginia Madsen, and probably the best role she'll ever have. She's said it before. I know she was nominated for an Oscar for Sideways, but she's like, this is the one I get recognized for. This is one of the movies I'm most proud of.
She put out a beautiful Instagram post about Tony
Mm-hmm.
when he
It's
passed.
great. It's so funny too. 'Cause she's like, we always talked about doing, prequels and this. I'm like, good. I'm so glad you didn't. We didn't need to see
Yeah.
de-aged or.
DH Tony shows up for like a second in the
It's fine. It
Candyman.
works. It's
It's
in it's
just enough. It's
dreamlike.
just enough to let you know he's still part of this. Like, it's fine.
But a hearer version of um and like yes, I have my own opinions of my theories of this story and where they're the two of them and their kismet,
Yeah.
right? Like like or at least that is what this story is telling us. Their kismet. And there's parallels today to some movies I want to bring up, but Helen's a fucking idiot. Um
Yeah, unfortunately, she's not too they don't portray her as being too insightful. Like either the movie is being too heavy-handed at showing you how shitty Xander Also, it's a cheat. Xander Berkeley always plays a piece of shit. Like when that dude shows up in your movie, you know he's an asshole. Like the closest he ever comes to being a decent guy is when he's the foster dad who gets murdered in T2. That's like the only time you ever feel anything but contempt for Xander Berkeley.
But it was the time for Xander Berkeley where you're not like that guy's going to be the piece of shit.
No, I knew immediately. You could absolutely tell. He is like I fucking his student while Helen is right there, and at the same time, he's basically like shitting on her thesis and telling her that he poisoned her interview pool by starting a stupid class, even though she asked him not to.
Yeah, he sucks.
Yeah,
his
he
wife's
fucking sucks.
his wife's in grad school, and he's like, oh yeah, let me just ruin your urban legend
Well,
thesis.
and obviously she was his student too. This is just like a cycle for him. Like
Yeah, like they get
they're in a
married.
relationship. I don't think they're married. I just think
No,
they're
they
in a
are.
relationship together. Are they?
I'm pretty sure because there's a wedding. It looks like a wedding photo.
I thought it was just like a haha laugh, like a selfie laughing. I didn't think it was a wedding
No, I
photo.
think there's a
You
photo
could
of
be
her in
right.
a dress and him in a tux when
Oh,
they're
okay. Maybe
showing
I just didn't
photos.
see that.
I
That's even crazier.
I think I think they're Helen Lyle and Trevor Lyle. Yeah, like
Oh,
she
okay, all
has
right.
his last
I
name.
guess I always just thought that they were in like a committed relationship where they're living
Yeah,
together, but I didn't really
no,
know
except
they're. That's even more crazy. That I mean, spoilers, but like he's shacking up with that girl at the end. She's only been put away for like a month. Like you moved your wife. Like,
the
you didn't
ending.
get any paperwork. You didn't get. She didn't get
There's
divorced.
there's two things about the end.
I-
Guy has her move. Guy has his mistress move in with him, and the mistress says, "Yeah, sure." And then the way she paints that fucking apartment, it is.
Why does she start? Why has she started every wall?
That's what I'm
Like,
saying.
why does she not just do one wall at a
So
time?
someone said you got to do the edges, and so she took that as like, well, if I'm going to paint everything this pink color, and even in her, even though she's not really insane, but Candyman is making her insane. During Helen's insane brain, she has the right to know, be like, I fucking hate that color, and chucks the paint at the wall. She's never been more real than being like, what are you doing? That is an accent color or color for a
Yeah.
bathroom.
Yeah,
Oh,
that looks terrible. It
so
looks like a Barbie dream house. It's fucking
anyway,
awful.
that was nuts. Seeing like so many walls painted like that, but anyway, so
Sorry, tangent. That's good though. We got that out of the way. 'Cause it's not a thing we would have talked about during the scene. We
no,
need to get that out.
I would have because that is that is for a scene that have a person escape an insane asylum, she shows up to a crazier place. Also, who just takes a shower while their partner's painting?
Yeah, I mean,
Guys
aren't you
like
gonna
that.
help? You're not gonna help paint.
She's like, huh. It's like I don't. We've all painted. You have to have a system to painting. Some drop claw. Wild move. Also, wild move to be like. It's kind of like it's kind of like an oddity where it's like, yo, my wife, who I loved, even though it was cheating on, is um, murdered. Like was bleeding out in here. Had a traumatic experience in my apartment. Let's just keep the apartment and have my
Yeah,
mistress move in.
yeah. At that point in this movie, my wife he thinks my wife committed a murder here. She
Yes,
butchered her own best friend
yes.
in my living room.
Bernadette.
Anyway, paint the walls pink. Let's do
Yeah.
it.
So fun fact, Bernadette, and so actually, I'll bring it back. Helen is doing her thesis with her girlfriend Bernadette. They're both in, I imagine, grad school or getting their
Yeah,
masters somehow. Um, and their thesis is on the use of the Candyman legends and urban legends specifically. Uh, and they realize it's to the projects of Cabrini Green, which is a real project house in Chicago at the time.
well,
And
it's interesting. I guess I had noticed, but it's just like the way the structure is. I just never realized how tight it is. As far as you find out that because of his class, it kind of like fucks up her interviewing the students isn't as good because they all are like got weird conspiracy brain about urban legends or something.
yeah,
For some reason, she's mad about that, but that leads her to start talking to some of the cleaning staff,
no, it's
which are
just
like
genius.
some ladies, some black women, and so they like have a completely different perspective on it, and
Mhm.
that gives the idea to go to Cabrini Green and research Cabrini Green. It's funny because she's doing the very like surface level version of Candyman at first. You know what I mean? She's doing
And she
like,
should have stayed there.
well, sure, obviously, but it's like when she scratches the surface just a little bit and gets into the real
I
thing.
think it's interesting.
But then, like, this is just the beginning of the terrible decisions. Like,
Well, it gets interesting in the sense of like they tell her about it, right? There's some murders committed. Everyone says Candyman did it in the neighborhood. She looks up there's one specific murder. She looks it up in the microfiche. Great, and that is a call. There's a great callback to the microfiching in the requel. That's when you hear the Virgin Madsen VO because he goes and does his own research. Anyway, I love the parallel of that. Like he's in the library, she's in the library. Um, but like men slain don't or women slain don't know what it's from. Used a hook. Like so, they talk to the cleaning staff. This where I'm like, I actually like so my wife doesn't watch this stuff, but she was sitting there reading and just wasn't looking and would only hear some of it. I was explaining, I'm like, if you were doing your thesis and you told me you were going to go to the fucking projects, I would lock you inside the house.
Well, also specifically to investigate somebody who got murdered there, like.
My favorite of that is the two girls are like, it's fine. They think we're or especially Virginia, it's fine. They think we're the cops. That's a good thing.
That doesn't make it better. That's not going to make them treat you better.
Yeah,
doesn't
like
make you safer.
They're walking in like, I mean, like today a cartoonish description of project housing.
Yeah.
Except around the housing, at least the one.
I would say it's a little more. Looking back on, especially like the type of movies they were making about like gang culture and stuff at the time, I'm really glad you could have had like a ton more stereotypes hanging around outside and like.
I think like what's her? Yeah, the woman they end up talking to with the baby with the Anthony
Anne-Marie.
Stolen. Yeah, Anne-Marie. Like her place looks like a real place. It looks like she's.
And I think that's important that like they show that regular people just live in those apartments and like.
Yeah, it does its job. It does its job. But like, man, girl, that's not her first dumbest thing. She gets through it.
Well, no, her first dumbest thing they do before that, her and Bernadette call Candyman. They just flat out call him.
Oh well.
Right away.
But I don't know if your notes. I don't know if your notes the same as mine. They call him. Actually, Helen finishes it.
Right. She says the fifth one by herself. Yeah.
But Bernadette, I'm sorry, Helen. They do it. They do it actually, as I would think, like 24. I'm gonna call them 23, 24. Then that's about what you'd be in grad school.
You're a grad student. Yeah, that sounds all right.
Give or take a couple years. This way, that
early 20s-ish, yeah.
Yeah. They do it, I think, how you would if you were like, oh, whatever. Like, they're not taking it seriously because it is still a movie about class. Like, I know that's what's stripped because they're just a bunch of, what's the word? Not intellects, but like, yeah,
yuppies.
Like, yuppie kind of like, yeah, whatever. It doesn't matter. Like, and I do think that's true. I do think you and me, probably 3 out of 4 people we know, if we told them, Bloody Mary, right, would be like, yeah, whatever, I'll go run to the bathroom, say it, who cares, I'm an adult. Like, and that's kind of, right? Like, and that's how I felt that's how I felt they treated it.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, it's not to be taken.
And I feel that's good. Yeah, I think they do it well. I think that's like, it feels natural. I do feel like it has that kind of like we talked about, again, going back to Oddity, the kind of arrogance of not taking it. Like, I don't have to take it seriously. There's no way this could ever come back and hurt me because I'm above this. This won't, you know.
Like
and that's representative in the class structure of the movie too. It's like, I'm above the situation here. This type of thing doesn't affect me because of where I'm positioned in society, etc.
Yeah, did they take it? So I actually love how that's handled because it's and at that time they've already heard the legend three different ways too, right?
Yeah.
There's not I do wish if I had one note.
They haven't technically heard the origin though yet.
No, they haven't heard the origin, but they've heard it like 2 different ways, basically, right? From the beginning of the person telling the thing, like they're familiar with the Candyman legend from a few different sources. So like urban legends, it's told a few different ways. No, and then after they do that, things are fine. They have a few little tease scares there, nothing big, right? Like I do love the shot right after of like looking at the bathroom, and then it's just Xander jumping in the bed,
just like jumps into bed because he's drunk.
Yeah, like that's effective enough because it's like I said, as someone who's been scared of the room of like there's the bathroom, this is this very much in mind. But no, they go to like a dinner with like another, couple friend or another professor.
Well, I want to talk real quick about when they go to Cabrini Green. When they're actually doing the investigation, because I unlocked a sense memory when I was watching it because I remembered that the part where she's walking through and she's seeing all the crazy paintings. She comes that famous shot of her like walking out of the mouth, the big face is painted on the wall.
Oh
She
yeah,
comes out of the screaming mouth. But all that stuff made me remember that I used to kind of like confuse this with the scene in the first Child's Play where
he
they've got
goes
the big
to
voodoo mural on the wall and all
Chicago.
that, and you got
So
the black and also the black voodoo guy, and stuff
it's a
like that.
winter.
Huh?
It's winter,
Yeah,
Chicago
it's winter
also.
time. So like all of and like yeah, you got people like bundled up in coats. You got Catherine Hicks and Virginia Madsen both like wearing a big coat and running
Similar
in
look.
and see like there's just a lot of things that blended together in those for me
I
those
get that
two
completely.
movies.
And those are the
Um,
pockets of Child's Play too. You kind of forget about. Like you forget he
yeah,
takes a side adventure. I mean, like you don't, but you kind of forget he takes a side adventure to like the once again. It might be Cabrini Green, the projects of
yeah,
Chicago.
absolutely.
Um,
I
and
that's the other thing I was watching that I didn't mention, but I'm only into like the second movie, but I've been watching that doc of Chucky a little bit, so that's what it was on my mind too,
it's good. It's a very good doc. We were talking about last week. I side note about the doc. The first few film like Child's Play, like 1 to like Bride,
Mhm.
they keep it super interesting. Then I feel like the back end it gets a little redundant, and I'm curious next time we talk your thoughts when you finish it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But that's the way to do it too. It's like 5 hours out in one
Well,
sitting.
and it's like we're so
We
again
know
off
all about
topic, but we're so into Child's Play, and I've read and watched so much about Child's Play that it's like I can break this up. I don't need to like sit with it. I can like just kind of
it. No,
take it
I
in little
know about
bite-sized
it.
pieces.
Anyway,
Um,
so
I did
we're
also want to real quick before we jump out of the projects part.
no.
Not
I
only
think
do
we
we
should
meet
stay
Anne
here.
Marie and they talk to her, but baby Anthony's there and he's important because he comes back in Candyman.
Hmm.
He's
That's
Candyman.
a great. It's great. They do a great tie-in back
Yeah.
to the
Also,
roots.
the actress who plays Anne Marie, she's in the remake and
Mhm.
she looks the same. She is
Oh,
aged like a fine wine.
she
Beautiful.
doesn't age. She doesn't age. She didn't age. That's just
Could have 20, 30 years have gone by and she looked exactly the same. It was wild.
yeah. She did not age. So,
But yeah, so they have dinner with the douchebag intellectual guy who's
but
like the friend of Trevor.
wait. Now that we're back, it's back to the project housing. I did want to mention too because it was
Oh,
a
yeah,
real
go
thing.
ahead.
They go through that mouth through a medicine cabinet,
Hmm.
and those actually were real murders. Um, that
Oh, that they
happened.
use those like medicine cabinets because there was the yeah.
Come through and like break into people's homes and stuff like that, and that is actually pulled from reality. But anyway,
Terrifying stuff.
yeah, no, that's horrifying. So
Horrifying.
imagine like, oh, but brush your floss, and it's just like, and it's like, where the
Well,
fuck did
they
it
do
come
give us a tremendous jump scare with that later in the movie where Virginia Madsen's there and it's not silent in the way where you're anticipating a jump scare. It just happens. The cook just like comes through
from?
it just comes through the
And then
medicine cabinet. So good.
I love when that hook comes through because like it's almost like it gets kind of stuck, but then it's like because he has the Freddy powers, he's just waiting on the other side.
Of course.
Like he doesn't have to chase her; he could be there in an instant.
Yeah.
Um, so, but yeah, so we do get like this little background info dump story, and I think it helps us add to.
This guy with the long hair comes back for the sequel.
He's in the start of the sequel down in New Orleans, just telling the tale of
In
Candyman
Nolans.
and profiting off of a woman
Right, he wrote a
who is
book
deaf.
about it. He wrote a book about his dead friends.
Yeah, a woman. I'm sorry, a woman and her husband that they both knew that had a string of murders. Because let's
Yeah.
be real, Helen Lyle murdered to the general public. Helen Lyle murdered a shit ton of people.
Yeah. Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
um, but so this guy just tells the story about Daniel Robital. Uh, that just his
And
name right?
again, I like the way they do this. Like, they don't do a cheesy flashback like they did with when they told the urban legend
No, they
stories.
could have
They do it
easily
all classy.
they could have easily done, and once again, the music just helps this this when you talk about Candyman and the scores going on, it just helps elevates things. Like if I want you to, I would start talking about this right now and be like, just underplay the score right there, but we'll get copy strike. Um no, but so basically we learn he's an African American man born in the late 1800s. As a son of a slave who grew up to become a renowned painter, and he was this painter, and then he had
Well, a famous, important to note, son of a former slave who became a successful businessman.
Oh, okay.
So Daniel grew up in fine finishing schools. He was classy.
He was classy,
He grew up,
and they grew up in Chicago. This is a Chicago story, and this is a good note. And he fell in love and impregnated a white woman, and the white woman's father sent a lynch mob, and instead of it even just being lynched and murdered, they tortured and abused him, and that's where the bees come from, with smothering.
Chopped off his painting hand,
and just atrocities committed to this man. And
also, there is a little bit of kind of how I feel about the '90s Mummy movie, where I'm like, why did you create a monster? Okay, I get it, you cut off his hand, but why did you jam the hook in there? That seems weird. Why would you do that?
Yeah, that's a little. Yeah, the mob sawed off his right hand and smeared him with honeycombs stolen from an apiary, attracting bees to sting him to death. Yeah, it's a little. Corpse was burned in a pyre erected at the site. We're pretty green.
I guess they didn't specifically do a curse on him the way they do in the Mummy, but it does seem like they were going out of their way to make a vengeful spirit here.
Well, Freddy Krueger. Well, let's burn the house down.
But Freddy Krueger was at least a child murderer. He kind of had it coming.
Well, this is one of those ones too where
all this guy did was dick down a hot lady.
This man did nothing wrong. He was also a fucking intellect. He was an intellect himself, right?
Sure.
Like a painter of a businessman.
And I think Tony Todd definitely carries that. He has that gravitas right away. Immediately. You talk about the coat. I can't believe they call that a pimp coat. That shit is so incredibly beautiful. He looks like he looks like the richest guy in the 1920s. I fucking love that coat.
At the time of the release, I'm worried about people. No, that is played by Tony. Yeah, that was brought somewhere. I read that today, so it's gonna take too long for me to fucking.
No, that's okay. Don't worry about it. I think he has that kind of air of.
Well, do you know who
he plays classy?
Do you know who was originally considered or casted or some far enough where it's in any fun fact you read, it's the first thing. Eddie Murphy.
Damn, it would have been Vampire in Brooklyn.
Yelling.
No, like I said, it would have been Vampire in Brooklyn, so it would have been him trying to do scary and cool, but it would have come off cheesy and bad.
So what they say is the breaker of that, it more came down to height. Tony Todd's 6'5", he's a tall dude.
He's a big boy for sure, yeah.
6'4", 6'5", maybe even taller, and Eddie Murphy's 5'10", maybe 5'9". It was an imposing, and for what the movie needed, it wouldn't have worked. We would not be talking about today if it was, because at that point, in 1990, Eddie Murphy's Eddie Murphy. You're not. Oh, he did a couple comedy roles, but you know him from blah blah blah. No, he's Eddie Murphy.
He's a full bore Eddie Murphy at that point.
And I know you mentioned Vampire in Brooklyn. I know enough about that movie too. Where it's actually a pretty fun movie, but him and Eddie Murphy wanted to make a horror movie, and Wes Craven was like, "No, I actually really want to make a comedy finally," and that's where that movie kind of falls apart.
Yeah,
it's just clearly conflicting.
Eddie thought he was working with. He's like, "No, I'm working with the king of horror. I'm working with the dude here."
So anyway, there's a lot of interesting, fun facts behind that. They were really close on getting an unknown Sandra Bullock possibly for the Virginia Madsen part, but actually it was Bernard Ross's wife was going to be who was an actress of her own. Was going to be Helen, but she got pregnant, and for Virginia Madsen was considered for Bernadette before it was this should be a woman of color. So they were like, oh, that woman who auditioned for Bernadette, let's have her come back in for Helen, and that's kind of how that came back. Because
that's good.
This is most movies the cast makes this shit. Like I think if you have a weak Helen, it don't work.
Yeah,
I
agree.
And Candyman clearly, I mean, that's Tony Todd. It's the voice, it's the look, it's the saunter, it's the
everything kind of came together perfect for him.
I
It's
mean,
just
Bernard Ross had them take ballroom dancing lessons because he just felt like, oh, this is a romance between the two of you, and you want to play this sophisticatedness in the way you guys are going to communicate, and like. That's how, and until an actual murder happens in each scene, that's how the conversations at least happen. He very much treats her like it's very much a Dracula, right?
It's a seduction. Yeah, he's seducing her. Absolutely.
Well, that was the other. Sorry, I'm rambling off fun facts you read today. And it's Virginia Madsen. They originally in the scenes hypnotized her to give her like more of a thing, and then she asked them to stop it because it was working a little like too well.
Oh, that's funny.
Nothing that I read.
To this day, if you say a certain word to her, she'll buck like a chicken.
Funny. So anyway, so we get a really elegant way and a unique way of giving his backstory, which like could have been done like it's so similar to if you're a fan of Holes, which was more my growing up. The movie Hole, like
oh yeah.
Kissing, like has the same backstory of like interracial love, murdered, and then someone's out for vengeance for that. The two remind me of each other. So different. I don't know why I'm a fucking asshole. I don't know why I brought that up. Anyway, Helen goes, this is a great idea. Well, I'm going to go back to Cabrini Green.
By myself.
I'm going to leave. I'm going to leave my black friend at home too, who unspokenly is giving me at least, I feel like just a little chip of like
a modicum of
but what she does has to go down in like horror movie stupidity.
It's pretty bad. She baits a small child by like calling him a chicken.
And he's like, I'm not afraid of anything, because he's like, Candyman lives there.
He's like a little kid though, Helen. Like you don't need to like trick a little kid, man. That's fucked up.
There was one fun fact that was funny. Apparently that kid, they called him One Take Jake, because apparently he was just like knock out all of his scenes out of the park one take.
One and done, just a killer.
Like that kid looks like a pro to begin with. I don't know if he kept working. Let's see.
But her plan to bait the little child and learn it backfires horribly. And I do have to give this movie credit for not having her get raped, though. Thank you, Candyman, for not having Helen get raped.
That's in this. That's in there. Like
in the script, I bet it's in the script
or something, and it's not. And it's very nice that that just does not happen. So, but that scene, it. And like I said, it works. It works in full-fledged for multiple reasons. But she baits me that, and the kid's like, "Well, he got murdered in the bathrooms at the park, right?" I don't know if you've ever gone to like a public bathroom in that like in more of like a ghetto area, like in the park, any park really. They don't look as gross, but they all do. Like my grandparents lived in a city and like would take me as a kid, like, and I remember them being pretty run down, like in North.
Yeah, they didn't have full like sentences written in shit on the walls. No, probably.
I mean, those were like in hindsight, what's good? It's all like,
and not just smeared, like thick shit, like really like cake icing.
It's pretty humorous of how thick the shit is, and it's like perfect. It's like a perfect font.
Yeah.
So that's kind of funny.
Production design on the shit writing,
But
it's pretty good.
she's like walking in to get like no like I don't know what she's gonna expect to find in the last stall too. Like if like the body's still there, like if the broken they've cleaned it up. I mean not really, but like
Yeah, this happened a long time ago, kind of. It sounds
but
like
she's
the
like
flashback. It looked like it happened in the 70s.
yeah she can't breathe, you know.
Yeah,
In there, and she's like, well, got to take my photos. It's gonna help my thesis. And you know what the thing about her thesis? Who was the professor? We never meet the class that
no,
that was for. Um, but she gets there, and then obviously the Candyman everyone's afraid of is just like a local like gang like leader.
yeah. He's just like the local thug who's taken on the moniker of Candyman because he knows people are already scared of it. Like, so
Yeah,
he's just using, he's just.
and she goes, she's like, I gotta, I'm good. Just get out of here. Don't mind me. No, I'm just with the university. People know where I am. And instead of murdering her, he just goes, I'm Candyman, bitch, and hits her with the back of the hook.
Yeah, he just hits her with like the blunt side of the hook and probably like gives her a concussion, maybe a little skull fracture or something.
Yeah, and gives her one of the worst looking black fat
She looks
black.
like Rocky. That black eye is intense.
Yeah,
Like,
it goes down pretty quick.
yeah, it does.
But no, she gets that. The cops are there. They bring her in. You got a little great what's that called when they line up?
Oh yeah, lineup. There's a
Line
great
up.
little
You
lineup.
say,
I
I'm
love that because it's
Candyman,
a bunch of
bitch.
dudes like very unenthusiastically going, "I'm Candyman, bitch."
And yeah, the detective very like the detective's like, you did a great thing because we're able to pin this guy now and you could testify in court and no one's gonna come and kill you.
Yeah,
Because the little
they
kids.
do at least. Helen does at least call attention to that. I like that they don't like leave it unsaid. That she says it's crazy that there's been all these murders, but one white woman gets attacked, and now they can take the, now they're like got
Yeah,
the
like
place locked down. So I like that they at least acknowledge
well,
that. Like,
they're they're like I think we could pin them to that, right? Like they're Helen at least and like I'm sure like Bernadette and like because they're intellectuals. They're like they are the people that are in like when a weird comparison the get out liberals of like I would have voted for Obama a third time.
yeah, to some extent, sure, I can see
Right,
that.
like that's they're conscious enough. Like she cares. Like Kellen thinks she's doing this stuff because she, even though it's just for a paper, like that she cares and there's something there that she can unlock. I
Yeah,
mean,
there's probably something where she feels like these people's story deserves to be told.
yeah, right. Like I don't like her intentions are good, and I think people so like her saying that. And they say that, right? Like all these people murder, one white woman gets hit and concussion.
Now you can lock the whole place. Yeah, now they lock
Yeah,
the whole place down
and
or
like
whatever. Yeah.
she unfortunately she's not wrong.
Okay.
Um, but so she has that right, and
She's healing from her concussion. She has that cute little dinner with Xander Berkeley he doesn't deserve. You can
oh,
tell he just came from cheating on her,
he's
and then
always just coming from cheating.
and then like she's got a meal all made for him and is all loving and
She
stuff.
gets she. Oh no, sorry, you're right. She hasn't been arrested yet. All loving
No,
me.
no, that's about to come because we haven't actually. It's funny because we're just about to get our first scene with Candyman. It's right after this. You have the nice dinner, and then she's walking through the parking lot. She's basically fully healed from her wound now.
Yeah, it's been a couple weeks
It's been a
probably,
couple weeks probably, and she's walking through the parking lot. And this is where we get our first introduction to Candyman.
and
43 minutes in the movie, almost the exact halfway point of the movie.
so good. Yeah, the movie's a tight 101
So
minutes,
good.
so it's really like a tight like 93,
Love it.
right?
Love
Credits. This is when you get your and it's almost like it's playing.
it.
It's almost like it's playing in her head, like right, like and this
You
guy.
can tell the hypnotism thing makes sense in this scene, especially. She's very like locked in, her eyes open. She has they do the single tear as he's like just talking to her.
They consistently light her eyes to have them just
Sure.
shown
Yeah.
like this. Um, but he's talking to her,
Also, we talked off camera. beautiful. Virginia Madsen, incredibly beautiful. She looks like a porcelain doll in this. Her
Oh,
face
oh,
is looks so soft and like
it's
she looks incredible in this film.
it goes around a lot every once in a while, on, like Twitter and whatnot, of like, what's the best anyone's ever looked in a movie? And my answer is always Cameron Diaz in The Mask. You put any frame of that, she looks stunning. How she's been lit, just dressed and everything. A good runner-up, or I would say a dark horse. I don't want to say a runner-up because there's plenty of other.
Yeah.
Virginia Madsen in this movie, that's just purely just because of how good looking Virginia Madsen is. It's not even so much of what the movie's doing for her.
No, she's just beautiful.
So, but yeah, she looks great. But yes, this is our introduction to Tony Todd, Candyman, and I mean, what introduction! Long parking garage, and like, you kind of just get the introduction. Where, like, nothing happens.
I mean, he just like approaches her.
No, he approaches her, but like,
and she basically passes out. And then when she wakes up,
that's when this is when I'm like, oh, his powers are like, he's a sick fuck, because that is the most evil thing he could have done. Is not just, oh, you're gonna wake up and oh, you're in the lair. It's, you wake up, you're covered in, which I believe they think is human's blood, but dog's blood.
Yeah. Well, anytime a killer like takes over a person and uses them to do crimes is always a good,
But she wakes up, full blackout. We wake up. I love it too because like the camera changes to just being that frantic, as if you're Helen, and the chaotic movement and everything. And she picks up a meat cleaver because she's afraid. She's like, "Well, I might have to defend myself."
Right. She doesn't really know what's going on. She sees the dead dog. She hears Anne Marie screaming in the other room.
Yes.
I don't know about you. I'm sure if you have the Shout Factory, you probably watch the same unrated cut I did.
I watched the unrated.
So when she's struggling with Anne Marie and she cleaves her in the arm, there's like a real like Quentin Tarantino style spray of blood, which is great. It's amazing.
There's like a few editions. That's one of them, I believe, right? In the unrated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely when the psychologist gets it later, it's like a longer, gorier shot.
Yeah. And I think that's why I'm like, oh, like when the murders are happening, like they're brutal. Like there's there's horror, and that's why I'm like, it's not a traditional slasher. Like most slashers, like, oh yeah, like, I don't know, there's murder and it's there's blood out. It's not gonna sit with me. The Candyman ones have always just, this one, it's like, oh no, like that scene, the Anne Marie scene, her screaming and crying because her baby's missing, and Helen's there. Ugh. But the cops arrive and they arrest her. And obviously, when they see her, is a woman holding a cleaver, and a dog's head has been chopped off, and a baby's missing.
Yeah, and Anne Marie got cleaved in the arm in the fight, even though Helen thought she was defending herself. It doesn't matter. The situation is, you got a dead dog, you got a woman cleaved, you got a baby missing, and you got one lady holding the cleaver.
And you were there a week ago, and you've been poking your head around a place you shouldn't be.
Yeah,
so that is a big part of Bernard Ross's wanting to do this and this and in the projects, and doing this with like Cabrini Green race. Wasn't that these aren't places you should be, was that, oh, like, you dumb white people shouldn't be afraid of these like ghetto areas, like they're just working and stuff, like you're the real danger here. Like that's at least what he wanted to put out on screen, part of it. And it kind of plays with that, right?
Yeah, I mean, it at least touches on that. I don't know if he's 100% successful in conveying that, but I definitely think there's elements of that can poke through still.
And that comes back up. That's just one of those comes back up. Did I pull it? Oh, that's what it is. I have a quote. And the biggest urban legend of all, for me, was the idea that there are places in cities where you do not go, because if you go in them, something dreadful will happen. Not to say that there isn't danger in ghettos or inner city areas, but the exaggerated fear of them is an urban myth.
Okay.
Don't actually disagree with that, right?
No, I agree with that fully. I mean, you see it all the time now online, people terrified of big cities. These people who've never been, who have no idea what it's like to live in the city, but they see them as these cesspools of crime and stuff. And it's like,
But then
I mean, shit.
it's
Even my own mom will call me up if she sees a crime story on the news and like it happens somewhere near me. I'm like, I'll call you every time a meth house blows up out by you, or the basketball coach molests one of the girls.
and
Like,
oh yeah, yeah,
like
it's
crime
all
happens everywhere, just because it's
every
the kind of crime that gets reported on.
everywhere. And then my brother lives in the most waspiest town, and it's not a real crime, but he sent a video. He's rebuilding his house, and it's like, oh, we have some dumpster divers walking around. You know, they were looking in their dumpster. Like,
Yeah.
it's the of the scale we're talking about. This is like a 1 out of 100, but um no, so I just thought that note, and that's the thing of these, like, there's more thought in this shit than like you would imagine that's put out there when people are making, films and of this. And so that was just an interesting note, because and then this the term everyone likes to throw around, at least this last couple of weeks, this is like the definition, though, at the same time, of like fuck around and find out. So but anyway, Helen is like, Helen's in prison. We have this really like awful scene of her like in a vulnerable scene, like her in blood, and has to like strip in
Being
front.
strip searched with all bloody and stuff. There's
Virginia
definitely like it. There's definitely elements you feel like they play like an assault victim, like
Yeah,
you know what I mean. They're definitely playing into that to some extent.
yeah. And Virginia Madsen for that scene was just like, oh, the woman who played the police officer was her friend, so she's
Oh,
like,
that's
I'd be
good.
more comfortable, like,
Definitely a character actress I'm familiar. Like I've seen. I think that lady's actually in Jason X, or no, Jason Goes to Hell. I
oh,
think.
that's your brain.
Mhm.
um,
But I do like too. They throw in the little detail where she tries to call Trevor, and nobody
oh,
picks up, and it's
and
3 in the morning.
yeah, and he's just out fucking around, and she even
Yeah,
has a look like, so what are you
she
doing?
knows. She
She knows.
knows.
What are you What are you doing at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
at
Where
like
you at? Where you at 3 a.m.?
I was at 3 a.m. a couple weeks ago, partying, because it was post that World Series game, and it was just we were out, but like that's abnormal. Um, no, Trevor was sleeping, just not in his bed.
Yeah, he was sleeping
Uh,
somewhere.
but so but what's great about the scene, also talking about like class and everything, is she sits down, and even though she's terrified and scared, she's just like, you know, where I didn't write his name down, but like, I want to speak to Detective Smith. And the guy comes in and immediately just doesn't start treating her like the girl who got hit in the projects.
Right, it's the same cop who was very nice to her when she got beat up in the projects, but he has changed his tune now to the fact that she has gone back to said projects and committed some
And
crimes.
he's like, "Where's the baby?" Basically, you're under arrest. I don't give a fuck about you. Where's the baby? And you know, we're gonna, you murdered a dog, this and that. You're under
Somewhere
arrest.
around here too, we see that the Candyman has the baby. Like we see him
Yeah,
in
there's a cut. Candyman has taken the baby and basically taken
into
him.
one of those apartments, actually very near to where Anne Marie is. I'm
Yeah.
surprised if the baby was crying, she couldn't hear him through the walls. They're so close.
But I think like the baby is possibly just like, Candyman is so ghost-like in this, and
You could have the baby under a spell.
yeah, it's mystical, right? Under a spell. And there's a
Yeah.
scene a little later where like he takes honey off of his like hook to like feed the baby, so it stops crying, and there's like caring for it.
Yeah.
But then like, the Candyman is sending mixed signals, because he's basically saying, Helen, if you let me murder you, baby's free. People will believe in me again if I take your life
Yeah.
and return this baby. But then at the end, Candyman wants to murder both of them.
Definitely. Yeah.
Uh um but so So yeah, they do
He
that.
basically wants to take her into the afterlife with him, and like make her his like permanent bride, ghost bride, kind of.
And I think that's that like romance and that, right? Like, so how I've read it, and it flip flops from, this is one of the movies where I could flip flop my opinions of its like roots. Helen's lineage was the original woman that he had his affair with.
Oh yeah, they get into that in the sequel.
But I'm just picking it from the first movie.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you see the mural with the later. You see the mural with the woman who, I mean, you're supposed to kind of look like her. They only ever do an okay job.
Green eyes,
and then of course you have the one at the end, which is like the more memorial one for her at the very end of the movie.
But I just mean like that's like where I'm like, oh, like that's the connection here, like the person. You know how they say like the elements will always find
Yeah, they don't ever actually explicitly say that she's descended from that same bloodline or anything. But they definitely imply that the reason that he's after is that he at least aesthetically she at least reminds him of the woman he was in love with.
But we shouldn't get the explanation because
no. That's what the sequel does. The sequel does that, and then you find out that the girl is like part of the. That's all in Farewell to the Flesh.
Yeah. But it wasn't the sequel. That's the girl, like the new lead. Is that
not right? Helen? It's not Virginia Madsen. It's someone else.
But I think Helen in this one is supposed to be like it's like the elements find each other.
Yeah, it's there. It's definitely all there. They just don't go out of their way to like spell it out.
Yeah, they were always going to find each other. And it's tragic because it's a murderous being and a woman just unsuspecting who happened to summon him. Like again, fuck around and find out.
Yep.
But they go back. And it's brief, right? She gets out. She is basically is able to go out on like a parole.
Yeah, she's out on bail.
Yeah. Immediately breaks it by murdering Bernadette. Well, Candyman.
She's going through the slides the picture she took at Cabrini Green, and then she starts to see Candyman in the background, and then she goes to the bathroom, and then they have the big background jump scare.
But what I love,
she goes to the bathroom, and the bathroom jump scare where he like sticks his hand out, and then we're worried, like we're like, oh no, he's there, he's gonna attack her, he's in the thing, and Bernadette's outside pounding, and then again blackout.
Being a great friend, just bringing her flowers, going to comfort her friend.
Just here to come see her friend.
Because she
doesn't believe her friend's a murderer, probably.
No. But she doesn't think her friend's a murderer. She knows she didn't show up there to do that. But it's actually the actress who played Bernadette actually ended up becoming directed some big stuff. Like she directed.
Well, she's in Silence of the Lambs also.
Yes, this was her time, but she directed the Whitney Houston biopic that came out a couple of years ago.
Yeah, pretty recently, didn't it?
Yeah. I Want to Dance with Somebody like a year or two ago. Anyway, I thought that was neat. Yes, but she's there, and the Candyman shows back up and murders Bernadette with Helen watching, and Helen, and once again, has a knife in her hand.
Yeah. This is a pretty hard one to like. Again, there's lots of horror movies where you're like, at the very end, you're like, oh, that person went to prison for all these murders. It's like it was a ghost, and the guy survives, and the ghost is defeated. But then, like, all those murders got to get pinned on somebody. It ain't gonna be a ghost, like. So, like, I like this movie kind of like gets that part out of the way. It's like, oh no, Helen would be the one getting everyone would 100% think Helen did all this.
Yeah, Helen's not. Like, the media was there.
And again, it's never clear if he's actually taking control of Helen's body and she is doing the killing, or if the ghost is killing. And
I think the way people react and what we see, like, I take this movie very face value. Mm-hmm. I think Helen is. I think people are seeing Candyman in that time, and he's killing them. Like, I think Bernadette saw.
Bernadette saw Candyman.
Yes. And got murdered by them, but because the difference between, like, if it was a scene with three of them and he's just gonna taunt Helen,
yeah, Yeah, that's fair.
Helen's only going to see her, right? Like, he's not coming up on camera, but if he wants you to see him,
No.
you're going to see him, right? That's like the way of like, you know, where we're going to go next, right? She goes to the psych ward and he's there, and the reveal there, it's been a month, right? She's
Right,
been,
basically, like, when she goes into the psychologist's office, he reveals that she's basically been doped up on Thorazine for a whole month.
and like even that moment, she's like, oh my God, I wouldn't have murdered my friend. Like
Yeah.
completely blindsided by even that information. Um, and in that scene, right, and this is where it's so like more dreamlike, like, right, she's like, okay, I'm gonna need the help, basically, and she says his name, and he appears, right. They even show her a video of her just freaking out on the bed, and it's like, look, nothing happened in the bed. What are you're nuts, lady.
You're there, you're just by yourself there.
You're screaming that he's here. And then he shows up, right? Like, he shows up, she's chained, there's nothing.
Well, I love that you just get the guy just is like, and like the buster, and then he comes up from behind him. It's very, like, the reveal there is very cool.
It's also such a messy. It's the only time he's really messy. Like, it's on his face, and he's like, you got to leave through the window, which is the only time in the movie this time I've been taking notes. I'm like, wait, so we were to have her like black out and bring her to the project, but now she has to like knock people out, put clothes on, find her own way back.
Yeah, she does a real Richard Kimball. I love, like, she's like Richard Kimball in The Fugitive, getting out of the hospital, like, sneaking out.
It's a fun scene, and like, it works. It really works within its thing. But no, she goes back, and you know, she's basically, Candyman's left the breadcrumbs for her to be like, you're destined to find Anthony and come to me.
Well, and this also is where, when she gets out here, is where we get that scene we talked about where she goes home and realizes that Trevor's already shacked up with this girl and letting her repaint the whole apartment and shit.
Crazy. I also like the assumption, maybe this is just what it was in the 90s. Her husband's like to his mistress, like, call the hospital. Does she know the number?
Yeah. Why would I know the number of the hospital where your wife is being held prisoner?
Is it written on a little note next to the phone on the wall? No, that's we're not CinemaSins, but
no, but it was funny,
yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Helen then she follows the breadcrumbs to find little baby Anthony. She basically, which all she does is go back to where she started. It's all in the same spot, like
the same place. And like I said, the Candyman's like ethereal, right? Like, people know shit's happening. They're afraid of him, and I think he just likes that fear in that neighborhood. But yeah, so he's taking a nice old nap.
Yeah, Libby's just sleeping. He's just snoozing.
And she's like there with a tinier hook. She's like, I'm gonna get him.
Yeah, she brought her own little hook. I like that too.
And you know, he wakes up and they have a moment, and this is the famous iconography of, like, he opens up his chest and the bees are just all in this chest cavity, and you know, his mouth opens to let the bees kiss him. Virginia Madsen, by the way, also, speaking about actresses, and the way, like, you know, treated is, she was like, I don't know if I could do these scenes. Like, I don't even know if I could take this role. I'm severely allergic to bees. And the director was like, nah, it's in your head. You're definitely not. And she's like, no, I am. And like, they did like intense like
allergies aren't real.
Yeah, they did like intense like doctor tests, like real like high end allergy testing, and they were like, well, you're more allergic to wasps. Like, you're highly allergic to wasps. You're not as much to like the bees we're going to be using. And it was like, he was kind of like, you'll be okay. Just, we have doctors on standby.
Yeah, you'll be fine.
Jesus. But that scene's awesome. And that's like the most seductive scene, right? That, and she's there, and they're kind of,
and I think that's very realistic to be seduced by Tony Todd. Like, I feel like that totally tracks.
And, you know, gazing, and that's like long shots of her eyes, and they're gazing at each other, and they're.
This is where he says the thing about, like, our crimes will live on, and like and give us power. So it's like, I like, again, that callback when they bring that back in the new movie.
Remember us and our crimes, and it's you're right. calls back, but it also redefines of like, no, in what he wants to do, and because he could just murder her at any point. Like, I think, the student doing the ritual is just getting in behind him, slashed up, and he's out of there. So, and it's just like how in the requel, like Anthony does it, and it's not just a quick murder; it's a low, foreboding, thing. And that movie has a much different explanation of like, there's been hundreds of Candyman, and this is just the newest iteration, and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But she's there, and she starts hearing Anthony crying in the background, and this is from the story, right? So, there's a pyre that they're building.
Yeah, in the center of the project, they have just a big burn pile that's been going. And...
yeah, that they're gonna have a big bonfire one day, and it is funny later, like early in the movie. She goes, "What, you guys gonna have a bonfire or something?" As if, like, it's like, oh, no, it's a celebration. It's Chicago in the winter in February or something. It's like
our little favorite little actor guy sees her go into the wood pile to save the baby, but because all he sees is basically a hand with a hook, kind of like working her way down into the pile, he assumes it's Candyman and just like rounds up his posse. He's like, he went in there, we're burning it down now.
And yeah, the pyre is from the original book.
Okay.
So that's something in I don't know where in London or Britain or wherever, that's something they did in that area. And they were like, this needs to happen. It was written in the script, but it doesn't make sense in Chicago. It thankfully looks awesome and works in the movie. But yeah, the kids' season was like, now's the time. They had the big gasoline.
Yeah. I love that they had the plan. They were just like waiting to spring their trap,
But the baby's down crying, and she's weaving and bobbing through them. The way I would have fallen my ass and just get impaled by a piece of wood instantly.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Candyman, because once again, he could pop up wherever. He's in there, and he's basically just like, it's done. We're done. Trapped now. And
we're going to die in here together, and then we'll be together forever.
And I think Helen just is very like, if I'm going to have one moment, it's going to be to save this baby.
Yeah.
And she sees a piece of flaming wood, stabs him in the chest, and I would say that's the most common slasher thing about this, is the way he dies.
Yeah.
He's like, no, I'm dead, I'm done. It's so,
it's always weird when the character's a ghost. It's like, so what does that mean? She didn't perform some ritual on you or anything. She stabbed you with a piece of wood. What's to keep you from coming back?
You would have burned that. And
they did not establish anything where they were like, only fire can cleanse us of candy. You know what I mean? They never really established anything like that.
I like the vagity of its rules, at least in the first one, but I agree. So anyway, she crawls out. She's burned. They have some great makeup on her to like showing what burns.
Yeah, I love the way the hair, like, the fire like crawls up her as she's trying to escape, and then it gets her, like, kind of burns off all her hair and stuff.
Everything off. And
she manages to like hand the baby out and to save the baby before she dies.
They're like, they note it, like the Emery's there, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Everyone, they kind of noticed. They were like, oh, I think they all thought, you didn't do this.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it is a moment of redemption, obviously, for, I think they realized that, like, she didn't ever take the baby. It's not like they think that she's returning a baby she stole. I think they realized that she is saving the baby. Yeah.
Like crawling out, essentially dying.
Well, and that's all confirmed at the funeral scene.
That is
also, where are Helen? Does Helen not have parents that would be at her funeral? There's there's Xavier and his fucking girlfriend. There's asshole intellectual ponytail. Penn Jillette is there.
No, I think that's just stupid movie shit.
Yeah.
To be quite honest with you, but that is a scene though where they all show up. I get a little sound corny. I get a little emotional.
Cool. I love that scene. I love they throw the hook. They throw in the hook with her. That's cool.
They're together and in death.
Yep.
Whether Helen wants it now or not, right?
Well, also, I thought it was one of those things where it's more like you did it, you saved us from this.
Yeah,
This
I
is what
think
this is like your trophy. You destroyed the Candyman. This is your.
absolutely no, absolutely. She is seen in that neighborhood at least by that iteration of you got rid of Candyman for us.
Yeah.
Um, so phenomenal, phenomenal in that sense. But yeah, and then it has, we get the Carrie ending. I
Got to
love
get our
this.
little button in there.
I fucking love this ending.
I think it's great. I love it too.
Just him,
First of all, I
Xander.
love that he is already like he just regrets. Like I like that we see that he's already suffering.
Yeah,
That's a great like we all want to see him get his comeuppance, but I like that he was already suffering. He misses Helen. His life with this new girl sucks by comparison to what like he realizes that she yeah, it was fun to bang her or whatever, but
just wear
now
no
that Helen
bra.
is gone and that she ain't never coming back, he's really like lamenting the loss and stuff.
Wearing the no bra, wearing the light shirt with no bra just casually while you're cooking is a wild move. But she's out there, just
She's
oh
young,
yeah,
she's got youthful free spirit.
just Gen Xing it up.
That's right. That's right.
Uh,
Um,
but yeah, he's crying in the bathroom, and like I said, he's just he says,
Well, he realized. I mean, he took Helen for granted. He didn't realize how good he had it. He thought, well, I'll always have Helen, who will be great. I'll just go bang this girl for a while till I get bored, and then I'll come back and I'll have Helen. Like,
and she shows up, and they have her looking. I mean, they have her just looking like the burn victim, but they have her looking like a movie monster right now with the
well, yeah, like
burn.
she's like Bride of Candyman, kind
Yeah,
of like
yeah. She's holding the hook, but her hand they have some prosthetic on her hand, so it's kind of burned into each other, and
yeah.
and she gets. We talked earlier. The thing gets them right up.
And like also, I would say the way the burns on her head are also almost styled like a very. It almost looks like a hairstyle, but
Hmm.
it's like the burn. It's a kind of a
It's
combination. It's
yeah.
like you said. It's very monster. Like it's like a look. It's
It's
like she has a
it's
design.
it's played really nicely, and I like that's our one appearance to it. It
And
probably.
also, I had never really paid attention, but he does do Helen in the mirror 5 times. He
But
does all 5 of them, and he
he
calls her
turns
out.
like a crazy like you said, like in a million years I never think of it, turns off the lights and just stares at the mirror and says it as if I don't know, maybe he's like, I'll summon her if she
Well,
made
it's
that.
like I don't even think he thinks he's summoning her. I think he's just doing the like, oh Helen, my beautiful Helen, why Helen, why?
No,
But
but
he's just only
he
saying
does
to Helen.
that. He does that and then turns off lights and does a few more as if it's the same way. Anyway,
That's true. He does kind of like finish it out more deliberately, I guess.
but
Yeah.
it's even more fun that it just doesn't end there with her popping behind and getting that. The young girlfriend opens the door and he's just fucking gutted.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she has a knife in her hand and she's gonna get pinned for that murder.
That's right. And the cycle will begin anew.
No, this is an awesome movie. Like I said, it sucks. We were on Blue Sky today, kind of being like it's an unfortunate reason why we're talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we would have gotten around to talking
Yeah,
Candyman eventually, no matter what. But obviously, to lose Tony Todd's a bummer because he's so great.
this is a
Whether it
dream.
was just showing up as one of the fucking Marines in The Rock, or it was his like bigger horror
I
roles or
want to
whatever, he just
revisit.
always was awesome.
I didn't say revisit. I want to
Everybody
watch.
knows I'm a huge Crow fan. He's great in The Crow.
I want to watch the. He's great in The Crow. I want to watch his Night of the Living Dead. It's been getting a lot of
Yeah, I've
praise.
never seen that either.
Yeah, it's been getting a lot of praise by people being like, because that's the iconic person of color performance, right, in
Sure.
horror, and he plays that role again, and I want to see what he brought to that because you're remaking any iconic character is tough. So
Yeah.
even with some of Tony Todd's nature. So yeah, man. I mean, that's Candyman. I know I've talked a lot. I've said a lot. I have a lot of, like I said, I have a lot
No,
of.
I think we both have it. I think there's a lot to say about this movie. There's plenty we didn't say, and we should also acknowledge that there's going to be stuff that we didn't touch on because our expertise just isn't in that subject, and we just left that stuff out not because we don't want to acknowledge it, but because we don't want to be ignorant about it. So, like, if we didn't, if there's themes and things that we missed that you like, feel free to let us know in the comments or tweet at us. But definitely know that the social constructs of this movie and the race and class things were not lost on us, even if we didn't delve into them as deeply as you might have liked.
Yeah, that is 100% perfectly put, Brian. Having said that, I know I have said my own piece, so just say go check out Candyman, check out its sequels, check out Tony Todd's other work. Any of our artists that have passed away, the best way to remember them is to honor and watch their work, and this is no exception. Having said that, you know where to find us. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and stay frightful. Welcome to Flyover State of Fear.